He stood at the back of his cluttered dorm room, his phone buzzing on the desk as a reminder that he had yet another study session in half an hour. For a moment, Chris let himself forget the pressure of midterm exams and looming deadlines. His gaze drifted to the outfit he had pieced together over several days. A sleek black dress, dark stockings, and heels he had practiced walking in when his roommates were out. He was 20 years old, and in his second year of college, old enough to decide what he wanted to wear at a costume party without explanation. Yet, there was an undeniable knot in his stomach. He inhaled deeply, lifting the black dress and pressing it against himself as he studied his reflection in the mirror. "I can pull this off," he whispered, attempting to summon confidence. A few weeks ago, when his friend Melissa had joked about everyone going all out for the campus Halloween party, he had jokingly tossed out the idea of dressing as a glamorous woman. At first, she took it as a silly comment, but when Chris insisted he might actually do it, Melissa, never short on opinions, started brainstorming how she could help. She had hopped from one thrift store to another, snapping photos of dresses she thought would fit Chris's frame. She even found a pair of heels in his size, which was no small feat eventually. She texted him, "Found the perfect pair. This is going to look iconic on you." Though Chris had blushed at the thought, he felt a small spark of excitement, too. For years, he'd thought about wearing something dramatic and eye-catching for Halloween, something that would make heads turn. After all, Halloween was a time when you could be anyone else, and it felt oddly freeing. Now, hours before the party, Chris eyed the ensemble draped across his chair. He tried it on piece by piece, adjusting the wig he'd borrowed from the campus theater group. He pulled on a pair of stockings, stepping carefully so as not to snag them. Finally, he slipped into the black heels, wobbling slightly until he found his balance. He studied his reflection, heart pounding. The transformation into Christina felt jarringly real. A knock on the door snapped him out of his thoughts. "You alive in there?" came Melissa's voice. "You've gone radio silent, and I'm starting to worry." He hurried to the door, conscious of his precarious balance in heels. When he opened it, Melissa stood there clutching a small makeup bag and an assortment of brushes. "Wow," she said, eyes widening. "That dress fits you better than I expected." Chris's cheeks warmed, but a grin tugged at his lips. "Thanks," he managed. "I think I need help with the final touches, though. Makeup is definitely not my expertise." Melissa nudged him back inside. "That's what I'm here for," she teased. "Sit on that chair and let the makeover commence." She bustled around, instructing him to tilt his chin up while she applied foundation, then to close his eyes while she experimented with eyeshadow. Each stroke of the brush felt like stepping into a new character. "This is weird, but it's cool," Chris said, stumbling to find the right words. He was careful not to reference any deeper reasons behind the thrill coursing through him. At the end of the day, it was just a costume. He told himself it didn't need to mean more than that. When Melissa was done, she stepped back with a proud smile. "Christina, you're going to steal the show." He let out a slow breath and inspected himself in the mirror again. Painted lips, contoured cheeks, and smoky eyes stared back. The transformation felt surreal. The tightness in his stomach eased, replaced by a fluttery anticipation. "All right," he said. "Let's go turn some heads." They left the dorm, navigating campus sidewalks thick with other students decked out in costumes that ranged from the ridiculous to the extravagant. Chris clung to Melissa, trying to manage each step in the heels. Every passing group of revelers seemed too distracted by their own fun to pay more than a glance to Chris's attire, which eased his nerves somewhat, but inside the adrenaline surged. At the entrance to the Halloween party, a massive banner flapped in the autumn breeze. Pumpkins decorated the steps leading into the building, and a faint glow from inside promised loud music and bright lights. The crowd's energy vibrated in the air, and Chris's pulse pounded in anticipation. They stepped into the ballroom, greeted by thumping music, costumed students dancing, and a swirl of neon strobe lights. Chris saw everything from vampires to superhero mashups. The crowd was exuberant, the atmosphere carefree. Perfect cover for someone not wanting to stand out as himself, but wanting to stand out as Christina. Melissa grinned at him. "Let's get drinks first. You look like you could use one to calm those nerves." He nodded, weaving through the crowd as best he could in the heels. A few eyes flickered in his direction, some curious, some amused, but he couldn't help feeling a thrill every time he noticed. They reached the makeshift bar, and Melissa ordered a fruit punch with an extra shot for him. "Cheers," she said, handing him the plastic cup. "To your first time rocking a dress in public." He took a sip, sweet liquid rushing through him, dissolving a bit of the tension in his body. "Thanks for the moral support," he said quietly. "I wouldn't have done this without you." Melissa poked his arm. "You did all the hard work. I just provided some finishing touches." An hour into the party, Chris found himself dancing with a small group of acquaintances who had no idea who he was. They laughed, praising his costume. The music pulsed, the lights flickered, and for once Chris felt free, losing track of time as he swayed among the swirling crowd. It was exhilarating, stepping away from the rigid constraints of how he usually dressed. He occasionally brushed aside a strand of the wig that stuck to his forehead. The dance floor was packed, and sweat beat on his skin. Yet he kept dancing. The more he moved, the more he got lost in the moment. It felt safe in this crowd of costumed people, nobody prying too hard. They had their own costumes to flaunt and jokes to make. But near midnight, Melissa, now leaning against a pillar and holding a cup of soda, waved him over. She'd taken off her pointy witch hat, fanning herself. "I'm dying from this heat," she groaned. "We should get some air." Chris nodded. "Agreed. I can't feel my toes in these heels." They stepped outside to a courtyard where a few others mingled, chatting under the dim orange lamps. Cool air touched Chris's flushed cheeks. Melissa plucked at the collar of her robe, and Chris slipped off the heels for a moment, letting his feet breathe. "That was wild," he said. "I never thought I'd actually do something like this." Melissa gave him a warm smile. "It suits you, though. You've been smiling all night." Before he could respond, some costumed classmates stumbled out into the courtyard, giggling and snapping group photos. A vampire, a clown, a sports star, and a handful of others. They beckoned Chris and Melissa to join in, and Chris hesitated, glancing down at his outfit. "Come on, Christina," shouted one of them, who was too tipsy to realize that wasn't Chris's real name. "We need you for the photo." Chris exchanged a glance with Melissa. He shrugged with an awkward smile. "Fine, just one." They posed under the lamp, arms around each other, while someone's phone camera flashed repeatedly. Chris assumed with so many people present, and him somewhat in the background, he'd remain a blur. He gave an exaggerated pout, and the group burst into laughter. It felt harmless. Eventually, Melissa walked Chris back to his dorm. He peeled off the heels, wincing at the soreness in his feet, and thanked her again for everything. He wanted to savor the memory of the night, how it felt to just have fun, unburdened by the usual worries. Early the next morning, Chris woke with a dull headache. He rubbed at his temple and noticed his half-wiped makeup was smeared across a pillow. Groaning, he stumbled to the bathroom, splashing his face with cold water. He looked in the mirror, the remnants of lipstick and mascara reminding him that last night had really happened. He spent the weekend focusing on studies, occasionally replaying snapshots of the party in his mind. Then Monday afternoon rolled around. Chris was in the library half-heartedly scrolling through social media to de-stress. That's when he saw a friend's group photo from the Halloween party pop up on his feed. He tapped on it, laughing at the variety of outfits. But then his stomach did a strange lurch. In the far corner of the shot, partially out of focus, was someone in a black wig, black dress, and heels. Someone who looked exactly like him. He exhaled slowly, pulse quickening. He was relieved that in this image, the figure was mostly turned away. It was no big deal, he reasoned. But more photos started appearing as he scrolled. Someone else had posted a different angle, zooming in on the group. The line of people, vampire, clown, sports star, looked crystal clear. And there he was at the edge, face turned just enough to reveal a glimpse. Heart thumping, Chris's eyes darted to the tagging suggestions. The auto tag had already identified a few classmates, but not him. Not yet. He clicked on the notification bubble at the bottom of the screen. The platform was suggesting possible tags, scanning the faces it recognized. Chris clicked to see the list. Relief flooded through him when it seemed that the AI was offering only generic suggestions for the others. Still, the faint terror remained. He closed the app, tried to refocus on his notes, but his thoughts churned. What if I get tagged, he worried. What if someone recognizes me and decides it's hilarious to let everyone know Chris was dressed like that? Even if it was just a costume, he felt panicked about the jokes or judgments that might follow. For the next few days, the tension didn't let up. Chris found himself constantly scanning social media, even at moments he should have been focusing on homework or meal times. He dreaded seeing a notification with the words, "You've been tagged in a photo." He'd always prided himself on a relatively clean online profile, one that professional contacts might check someday. Now, horrifying scenarios played out in his mind. Future employers stumbling across these images or family members catching wind of it, especially certain relatives who might not be understanding. He asked Melissa nervously the following Wednesday, "Have you seen any pictures of me specifically, like ones that are obviously me?" She shook her head, concerned. "No, not that I've noticed. And you're not obviously identified as Chris in any of the photos I've seen." "That's a relief," he muttered. "I feel like I'm losing my mind over this, though. Every time I see a new post from that party, I worry about being recognized." Melissa placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "It was a costume party. Even if someone notices, they might just say, 'Wow, great costume.' And that's it." He nodded, trying to adopt her confidence, but the worry clung to him like a shadow. The real blow came late Friday night. Chris was awake past midnight, unable to sleep. He decided to do one last scroll before bed. An unfortunate habit that worsened his insomnia, but sometimes soothed his curiosity. That was when he saw it. A photo posted by someone he barely knew, featuring a big group in the courtyard. He recognized each face, shining with sweaty post-dancing joy. And there he was near the side. This time the camera angle was too good. The wig hadn't slipped and the makeup was still intact, revealing a pretty clear look at his face from the nose up. Before he even checked, he knew what the caption read. "Another amazing Halloween with the best crew." The post had a Halfosen tags. Someone had gone through and identified each person in the group. Chris forced himself to look at the suggested tags. His name was one of them, waiting in the suggestions. A flick of the phone screen showed the AI confidently proposing that Christina's face matched Chris's existing profile picture. He felt his heart drop into his stomach. Although it wasn't publicly tagged yet, the platform recognized him, matching geometry of eyes and cheekbones. It was a matter of time before the user confirmed it was indeed Chris. Maybe out of curiosity, maybe to be funny, or maybe not even thinking it would cause him stress. The fear that he'd become a punchline for campus gossip began to coil around him. He sent a quick message to the account owner, someone named Justin he barely talked to outside of group projects. The message read, "Hey, about that Halloween post, can you please not tag me in it? I'm not comfortable. Thanks." He waited, restless, refreshing his inbox. No immediate response. He felt a cold sweat along his neck. The next morning, he woke early and checked again. Still no reply. The post remained up, the suggested tag still looming. Chris stared at his phone, trying to decide whether to make his profile private or change his settings. Melissa found him slumped in a corner of the student lounge. "What's wrong?" she asked, scanning his pale, tense expression. He showed her the photo. "I messaged Justin not to tag me, but no answer. I might have to talk to him in person, but I barely know the guy." She grimaced empathetically. "I get it. If you're not comfortable, you should tell him that clearly. Just explain you don't want that public. I'm sure he'll understand." Summoning his nerves, Chris spotted Justin at a campus event later that afternoon, a small fair in front of the library. He cornered him near a set of tables offering pamphlets about study abroad programs. "Hey, Justin." The taller student turned around holding a slice of free pizza. "Oh, hey, Chris."
"Right."
Chris nodded, swallowing. "Yeah, from that group project last semester. Listen, I sent you a message. It's about that Halloween pic you posted." Justin blinked, trying to recall.
"Oh, yeah.
"Sorry, man. I've been busy. I haven't really gone through my messages. Is there a problem?" Anxiety rippled through Chris, but he forced a smile. I'd really appreciate it if you didn't tag me. I'm not comfortable with it. Justin shrugged, taking a bite of pizza. Sure, no worries. I can ignore the suggestion. I don't have to tag you. It's just something the system recommended. Relief washed over Chris like a sudden breeze on a scorching day. Thanks, he said earnestly.
I really appreciate that.
Of course, Justin replied. But I can't stop anyone else from tagging you if they decide to. You know that, right? Chris gave a stiff nod. I know. I'm just hoping no one else bothers. He felt a semblance of peace for a few days. Justin had indeed ignored the facial recognition suggestion and didn't tag him. Chris changed his privacy settings as well, deciding to get notifications every time someone tried to tag him in a post. But each time his phone buzzed, he'd still glance at it with a flicker of panic, dreading the worst. Days drifted into a week. Midterm exams came and went, and Chris managed to sink back into his daily routines. But the tension never truly left him. Every casual scroll through his feed was a reminder of that precarious moment in the courtyard. Some pictures were so dark or blurred that no one would guess it was him, but some were dangerously detailed. One afternoon, Melissa came by his dorm again. He was sitting at his desk, textbooks open, though he seemed more interested in his phone than the pages. Are you still looking at those photos? She asked. He ran a hand through his short hair. I can't help it. I need to know if someone tagged me. Every day, I see new uploads from that night. How many pictures did people take? A lot, Melissa admitted. But I've told you even if someone does recognize you, you did nothing wrong. It was a costume. People cross-dress for Halloween all the time. He sighed, looking out the window at the autumn leaves scattered across the grass. I know that logically, but I can't shake the fear. For me, it's not just a passing joke costume. It felt personal, I guess. Even though it was for fun, I put so much effort into it. I worry about how certain people will react if they find out. Melissa nodded, choosing her words carefully. I won't tell you how you should feel, but I'm here for you. Also, if you want me to keep an eye out for any tags or posts, I can help you monitor stuff. Thanks, he said quietly, not specifying more. The days wore on. Classes resumed their frantic rhythm and campus life moved forward. Gradually, fewer people posted about the party as the excitement of Halloween faded. Other events took center stage, from football games to club fundraisers. Chris's anxiety softened into a dull worry overshadowed by final essays and upcoming holiday plans. But then on a crisp evening in late November, Chris received a message from a childhood friend who had moved out of state. Hey man, it read, saw some interesting Halloween pics from your campus. Is that you in the black dress? You look insane. Couldn't believe it was you. Chris's heart rate spiked. He stared at the screen, rereading the message. The friend had attached a screenshot of one of those courtyard photos zoomed in on Chris's face. The next message popped up. Why didn't you tell me do something like that? LOL. Chris's stomach churned. So the photo, while not widely tagged, still caught the eye of someone who recognized him. Now the friend might share it or mention it to mutual acquaintances. His brain ran wild with scenarios of classmates from high school mocking him. He forced himself to type a casual reply. Yeah, it was a Halloween thing. Everyone went big this year. No big deal. He could almost sense his friend's amusement. The friend typed back, That's awesome. You should have told me. That's a pretty bold move, man. The conversation ended without incident, but Chris's anxiety soared again that night. He confronted a harsh truth. The internet never forgets. Those photos would remain in the digital realm, ready to pop up anytime someone searched thoroughly or used the platform's facial recognition. As winter break approached, Chris fretted about seeing family members who regularly checked social media. He also had a part-time job lined up back home. He dreaded the possibility of coworkers stumbling across the pictures, especially the older employees who might see it in a negative way. He decided to confide in his roommate Devin, who hadn't been around much during Halloween. Devin was a laid-back guy, though they weren't super close. Sitting on the couch in their dorm suite, Chris explained the situation. I wore this costume, and there are pictures of me floating around. I'm terrified someone will tag me or share it widely. I don't know what to do. Devin listened, tapping a pencil against the coffee table. Dude, I get it might be nerve-wracking, but it's just a costume. You have control over how you respond if people see the photo. If they ask, you can just say you had fun. That's it. Chris swallowed. Yeah, but what if they judge me or mock me or use this as a reason to assume things about me? Devin shrugged lightly. Look, people might do that for anything. I played a clown once for a prank video, and some folks never let me live it down, but after a while, nobody cares anymore. Most people have their own lives to worry about. Those words provided a small temporary comfort. Chris tried to bury himself in final exam prep, hoping that the hustle of end-of-semester tasks would overshadow the possibility of new tags or photos. Occasionally, though, he'd see a friend from across campus jokingly call him Christina, prompting an anxious laugh as he tried to act unbothered. The real test came during a holiday dinner at his parents' home. Though it was a relaxed affair, Chris's aunt casually mentioned she'd seen pictures from the campus Halloween party. She didn't say more, but she gave Chris a curious glance that made his stomach clench. He quickly changed the topic, not daring to ask what she'd seen or whether she'd recognized him. One evening, he checked his phone and found an odd direct message from a distant cousin who followed him on social platforms. It was just an image of him as Christina accompanied by a single question mark. Chris felt a flush of heat in his face. He typed back, "Hello costume." The black dress was a hit. His cousin replied with a thumbs-up emoji followed by, "Cool. Didn't know that was your scene."
Chris stopped typing.
His mind churned with a dozen anxious replies, but in the end he sent no further messages. He tossed his phone aside, lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling. It struck him that this might never really go away. That night, he didn't sleep much, replaying in his head the worried thoughts that had followed him since the party. By the time classes resumed for the spring semester, Chris felt drained. But he found an unusual shift in his emotions. Though he still worried about the digital footprint of those photos, he'd survived a slew of subtle inquiries from friends and family. So far, no one had overtly ridiculed him or shunned him. That's not to say there hadn't been awkward conversations. There were plenty, but they didn't lead to catastrophic consequences. A few times, he spotted new pictures from the party popping up on social media. He discovered that some random partygo had posted a short video clip that included a shot of him dancing with Melissa. He watched it half-panicked. The camera panned across the dance floor, capturing him in his wig and dress for a few seconds, laughing freely as the lights flickered around him. He was sure the facial recognition would suggest tagging him, but no official tag appeared in the caption or comments except for a mention of #BestHalloweenEver. He realized it was out there in the open, but oddly enough, no major drama had erupted. The platform's suggestions to tag him still lingered, but apparently no one felt the need to confirm it. One day, in a moment of impulsive curiosity, Chris typed Christina Halloween into the search bar, uncertain what might appear. After sifting through an avalanche of unrelated posts, he found a single public shot with a partial group tag. Someone in the comment section teased, "Where's Chris? I could swear that's him." Another commenter responded, "Nah, that's just a random friend of so-and-so." For better or worse, it seemed no one was fully sure. As the semester wore on, Chris reconnected with new pursuits, an on-campus tutoring job, a film club that piqued his interest, and occasional hangouts with Melissa, who stood by him without judgment. Though the memory of the party still hovered over him like a faint specter, he began to sense that he might not be in as much danger of a major social media fiasco as he'd feared. Nevertheless, the anxiety never vanished entirely. Each time he opened his notifications, he felt the jolt of worry that someone might have found a new image and decided to tag him. But it no longer weighed on him with the same suffocating intensity. He had weathered a surge of nerves around the holidays, faced a few blunt questions from friends, and come out on the other side intact. It took one final conversation with Melissa for him to pinpoint what he truly felt about this ordeal. They were meeting for coffee after class. The cafe was bustling with students, and the scent of roasted beans filled the air. Chris fiddled with his latte cup, the foam swirling at the top. "You're calmer these days," Melissa observed gently. "I can tell." He offered a half-smile. "I guess I've realized I can't control everything. The pictures exist. Facial recognition exists. I can't force every single person to ignore a tag suggestion. Melissa nodded. So, what does that mean for you now? He stared at the latte, pausing. It means I'm being more careful with what photos I let people take, how I navigate parties, or even which events I show up to. But also maybe it taught me that if something about me gets out there, the world doesn't end. Melissa gave him an encouraging smile, though she avoided saying anything too grand. She knew he hated cliches about learning lessons. He sipped his latte, thinking about the swirl of images and his face among them. He remembered how alive he'd felt at that party. It frightened him to think that it might follow him forever online, but at the same time, part of him recalled the genuine fun of it all. In the end, nobody from the campus had maliciously outed him. A few recognized him. Some teased him in passing, but ultimately people moved on. He'd sent private messages to a couple of folks asking them not to tag him. Most respected that request. Time passed. The holiday decorations around campus gave way to new semester banners. The chatter in hallways shifted from exam stress to spring break plans. Chris found himself chatting with acquaintances who had been at that fateful Halloween event, and they never even brought it up. One evening, as he tidied his dorm room, he found the black wig stuffed in a shoebox. A memory of a night that had felt so thrilling and terrifying at the same time. He smiled faintly, running his fingertips through the synthetic strands. Then he set it aside, uncertain if he'd ever wear it again, but unwilling to toss it. The following weekend, he spotted Justin at a campus cafe and spontaneously chose to sit with him, bridging the gap that once felt awkward. They chatted about upcoming projects, their holiday breaks, and other mundane topics. Toward the end of their conversation, Justin said offhandedly, "By the way, I never did tag you like you asked, but if you ever change your mind, if you want credit for that rocking costume, you can let me know." Chris couldn't help but laugh. "Thanks, but I think I'm good letting it remain an untagged mystery." And that was it. No drama, no big reveal, no wave of humiliation, just two classmates making small talk. The tension that had haunted Chris for weeks began to dissipate further. Eventually, winter gave way to the early signs of spring. One day, Chris found himself walking across the quad when an acquaintance he vaguely recognized from the party jogged up to him. "Hey." Random question. The guy said, "Were you that girl at the Halloween party? The one in the black dress? Because if so, that was one of the best costumes I've seen." Chris felt a brief flicker of panic. Yet, in the brisk sunlight, with students hurrying across the quad, he simply shrugged and said, "Yeah, that was me. Thanks." The guy nodded in approval.
Nice.
Respect. Then he dashed off, presumably late for class. Chris stood there a moment, letting the tension roll off his shoulders. No grand meltdown occurred. No one formed a circle to point fingers. Life simply moved on the same as ever. He texted Melissa that afternoon. "It's weird how worried I was about those pictures. Maybe it's not as big a deal as I thought. Thanks for being there." She replied with a heart emoji and a simple anytime. Later that week, as Chris strolled to the library for a study session, he noticed a digital billboard near the student center rotating through photos of various campus events. Suddenly, a snapshot of the Halloween party flashed across the screen. The image was full of costume students. None of them singled out. In the back corner, you could see a figure in black, hair gleaming under the lights. It was him. The screen lingered there for 2 seconds before sliding to a photo of the football team. No one else around seemed to notice. He took a deep breath and continued on his way. The last vestiges of dread that had clung to him seemed to melt in that moment. He realized the campus had embraced so many quirks, so many flamboyant costumes and events. Even if the digital billboard looped that photo 1,000 more times, it would just be one snapshot among countless others, part of an ever-shifting digital tapestry of campus life. He remembered the swirl of dancing lights, the cheers of the crowd, the breeze in the courtyard, and the exhilarating sense of possibility in wearing that dress under the pulsing music. Even if the internet stored those moments forever, even if the AI threatened to tag his face, he had already faced the worst of his fears by living through the aftermath. And in the end, it hadn't destroyed him. It was one chapter in his life, a Halloween night that teetered between excitement and dread. He'd survived the near exposure, the tension of waiting for a digital hammer to fall, and he was still standing. That night, he found himself scrolling through his phone in bed. He spotted another friend's post, a year in review collage that included a tiny photo from that Halloween party. He could just make out the black wig on the far left. His friend wrote, "2023 was wild." Chris let out a soft chuckle. "You can say that again." Then he locked his screen, turned off the bedside lamp, and pulled the blanket over his shoulders. As he drifted to sleep, he felt a small sense of calm. The world kept spinning. Classes would resume in the morning, and the digital realm might still hold fragments of his cross-dressing adventure. But the panic had receded, replaced by a quiet acceptance that life would keep marching forward. He would never forget that costume or the heart-pounding terror of almost being tagged. Still, the moment had come and gone, leaving him with a strange mixture of caution and relief. Ultimately, it was just one part of his story. No more, no less, and he felt ready to keep writing the chapters yet to come. Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell for exclusive content and early access. Check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next.